This conference will now be recorded.
Down at the corner where they bought the farm at AB and Femright.
Yeah.
Anyway, a week after we approved it, Sunvest came back and said, oh, by the way, due to supplier issues, we can't get the panels we told you we wanted. So we want to add more acreage and we will produce less electricity.
Oh, that doesn't.
And we said, go back and do your homework again.
Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted just to prove it. I mean, like, you wouldn't know that there are supply chain issues within the last 7 days of your project. I mean, they were looking for the approval, come back, beg for forgiveness, and then, yeah, but they wanted to add like an extra 10 acres onto the size.
Seriously?
Oh, wow.
Onto the size of and produce just barely enough electricity for the county to meet its carbon neutral goals.
Mhm.
Instead of having a surplus. Yeah. It was not a very good meeting that night. But they kept saying, we have our deadline, we have our deadline. And I said, okay. Is the county under some legal constraints that they haven't have it going? No. So we'll see what the next plan commission meeting is like next month.
Okay. Landfill, did you guys just get done with landfill?
Yeah. No, that was, I guess that was a very quick meeting. 6:05. I like your style though.
Speed right through.
Knockdown, drag out.
Yeah.
Have to make up for the September one.
Yeah, was that 6:10?
No, that was a little longer because Tina was here.
Oh, Tina was here. That's good. That still got done for a half hour, didn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I gave her a heads up. And the fact that we're all pretty much well versed that we can, she doesn't have to explain every little squiggle and,
Oh, yeah, we do. That's a lot of documentation.
You know,
That's good.
it is.
good.
And, I'm glad that she is willing to do that, but
Mhm.
might as well make it easy for all of us.
High level, bullet points, good.
Go ahead. What's that?
6:30.
Yep, it is. What?
Call the meeting to order at 6:30 for the joint town village fire department. Quorum is present. Meeting was posted in the town and in the village. Have the minutes of September 27th.
I would move approval as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes of September 27th as presented. Any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Abstentions?
Aye.
2 abstentions, motion carried.
We almost had a quorum.
Public appearances, public's opportunity to speak about any subject that is not a specific agenda item. No one? Then we go to the chief's report.
So for the chief's report, we're currently sitting at 37 members. That's 1 driver operator, 8 officers, 8 probationary members, and 20 full-fledged firefighters. For the year, we've had 313 fire calls, which is our highest ever so far.
I'm sorry, how many?
313.
You said highest since ever,
In a year.
in a year.
ever in a year.
Yep,
Okay.
and we still have
Any idea what's causing that?
There's a few things. There's this trend. A lot of it stems from like the Pleasant Springs account and car accidents in the town that people really like to call 911, but they don't stop to see what's going on. So a car that's on fire a lot of times we don't even find a car because it was smoking or overheating. And by the time we get there, it's gone because it's not really on fire, but people.
That registers as a call.
Yeah.
So
You got no way to recoup any of that.
we get a lot of those. We get a lot of neighbor disputes.
Oh, God.
You know, I don't like my neighbor, so he's burning something, I'm gonna call a fire department. That happens a lot. So when working with PAA, we gave them all of our call numbers. They actually called me because they thought our numbers were inaccurate from how many canceled en routes. That's what we call those, is like if we go there, we don't actually find anything, or if we're canceled by police before we get there, it's a canceled en route. That number is so high for our department that they thought it was an error. So we had to run through the numbers with them and justify, and we showed them exactly what we have, and they just couldn't believe it. I mean, it's a high number. It's
Wow.
over 25% of our calls. So
Any idea how to fix that?
public education.
I don't know if there's any way to fix it. It's all you're gonna do is, you know, neighbors are gonna be neighbors no matter what. And you're gonna always get those complaints, but it's just hard to believe that that's that many.
Quite a bit. So
When the 911 calls come in and like somebody just reports like they saw a car on fire or something or smoking, and then they just drove by and just wanted to report it.
That's
And
what
so then you get to wherever they said it was, and there's nothing there.
yeah, there's either nothing there or state patrol will get, like the interstate, a lot of times state patrol gets there before us, obviously, because they go up and down the interstate the whole time. And if it's a mechanical problem where there's really no fire, then they'll cancel us because there's really no need for the fire truck to go out there for that.
Right.
Nick, would you say highest year ever, is that kind of a trend line potentially related to the growth too? I mean, is it every
It's been up
year?
and down.
It has been up and
you know,
down. So even with growth, you've seen down years.
Right, so like 2 years ago, we were at over 300. Last year, we were down around 270.
Okay.
So it's got peaks and
That's not a
valleys.
trend line.
There's no rhyme or reason to it, it's just public outreach.
Yeah, and this year we're getting a lot of calls also to help with Deer Grove. They're getting a lot more medical calls where they're calling in for lift assists or CPR. We're getting called for a lot of those. So there's that too. So
So if they get more staff, that might help you guys then.
it might, if they end up staffing 2 rigs, it might make it so they have to rely on us a little bit less. I don't know what his, like what his staffing plan would be with that, but I think it would help.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I guess I don't know. That's why you guys are paying a consultant, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
They'll know better than I would, so. The rest of the chief's report, engine 4, we installed the ultra high pressure system on it that was paid for with all fundraisers from the festival. We'll be using that for car fires, brush fires, and some other overhaul. It's gonna help us reduce water usage, and it's got some spot, I guess. It's another tool in the toolbox, so.
Nick, what'd you call that? Alter, what'd you call that?
Ultra high pressure.
Thanks.
And then engine 3, we had the brakes replaced. Those failed during the inspection and the quote was extremely high. We ended up taking it to Truck Country, which was able to replace it for significantly cheaper than the fire places we were gonna take it. So that repair is done. We're gonna have somebody redo the DOT inspection so that when it goes up for sale, it has a passing DOT instead of a fail. And that's all I got for the chief's report.
Okay. Any update on drafting of the consolidated fire agreement?
No, I haven't heard from the attorney yet.
Any update on the PAA future needs study?
Last I knew, we should be getting an update in December here, next week or two.
Hopefully, in the next couple of weeks.
And then they said something about having a joint meeting with the village and Deer Grove EMS in January.
Okay. Next, discuss and consider funding to cover the surveying bill for the emergency service building sign.
Boy, they don't work cheap, do they?
Well,
Boy, no kidding.
we approved the surveying back in February and the bill was dated 9/30 after our last meeting. I forgot, I thought they had billed it and we had paid it, but when we went through those expenses and the additional things that we did, that only left us $187 in that account. So I guess, I didn't have enough in that account to take it out of. So do we want to go back to our boards and each ask them for $600 to pay it?
We gotta pay the bill, so
Right.
yeah, the answer is yeah.
So we just got this though?
No,
Well, they
September.
They gave it 9/30 and we got it the following week, but
Yeah.
we had met on the 24th.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And
why is it so, I guess, I gotta ask, why is it so expensive to do a survey for a
I
sign?
have no idea.
They did survey twice because that's what the county asked for. So the county asked for a pre-installation survey and then a post-sign installation survey.
survey
We
and
did the
map.
work right.
$100 to survey it for
I had my property surveyed for less than that. But here they are, just that little square area.
$1,200.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what the estimate was?
Yeah, that's what,
Well, the other estimates were higher.
yeah.
It was like 1,600 if I remember.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is, so I'll motion to approve the funding to cover surveying bill for emergency services building sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Paul, second by Duclay,
Go back to our boards with
to
it.
each board to ask for
600.
each of us throw in the 600 and we'll be good.
Yeah.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Okay.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Discuss and consider use of ARPA funds for radio replacements. Chief?
Yep, so I know Deer Grove's board kind of talked to you guys about this too. And I've actually talked to Matt Geezy since asking for this. His understanding is that the village would not be able to use their ARPA funds to do this. I guess the question was asked, though, would the town be able to use their ARPA funds towards it? According to Matt and your guys' financial institution, I think it was Baker Tilly, their interpretation is that the town or the village did not lose any revenue, so they could not use it for that fund. But like municipalities all over the country are doing this exact same thing. They're using their ARPA funds to buy radios or
Using it for a lot of stuff.
they're using it for a lot of stuff. And I mean, there's examples of people buying entire fire stations with it. So.
I know, and I realize the town board's like conservative leaning, but I mean, my God, they don't give us any other options to use these funds.
What are the dollars?
So they gave us quotes for two different kinds of radios. I guess I kind of ruled out the higher one because they're the exact same brand, exact same manufacturer. The difference was like a bigger screen and more buttons, which I didn't think we needed more buttons because you know how people play with buttons, I guess. So for the more affordable, to do the mobile radios, which are the ones that are built into the trucks, all the radios replaced and installed, that quote was $37,707.44.
How many radios would that be?
That is.
10, I was gonna say almost.
I think there's 13 between all of them. It's kind of unclear, but we went through every truck. I actually brought the company out. They walked through each truck, looked at what we had, came up with a replacement for it going forward. So it's just to replace what's existing there now. And then there's a separate quote for the portable radios, which are the ones that people carry into the building or carry on their person. We figured about 40 radios for all of it. What we had currently, a lot of our trucks were using one radio per team, which is actually kind of a dangerous situation for us. Because if your teammates get separated in a building, the person who has the radio is the person that gets in trouble. The other teammate doesn't have a radio. They have no way of signaling for help other than their alarm on their pack. So we would like to change it so every seating position has a radio for the safety factor. So we figured 40 radios, that cost was $77,889.60.
77, you said?
Yep.
What did we put in the budget for next year as far, I'm just trying to square, did we do anything for radios next year in the budget?
I think it
I
was
thought we were
20
talking MDTs.
We're talking MDTs in this year's budget.
Oh,
Which you
yeah.
guys, the village or the town's already approved. The village has approved it, but it's got to go through the final review.
Yeah.
Which is coming up, so. So that's in this year's budget. I believe it was written into 2023's capital budget maybe, or 2024.
For the MDTs?
For the
For the radio.
But we applied for the AFT grant. We've done that 3 times for these now, or 2 or 3 times now. It is open again for the AFT grant, so we're gonna maybe apply for it again. But I didn't know if this was an option, while these funds are available to do this or not.
Could you apply for the grant now and just see what
Yeah.
happens in the future? And
Yeah, we
if
can.
they decline it again, then we're gonna have to revisit this whole.
So,
And
Is that-
maybe ARPA gets defined by then, who knows?
So would you still go for the grant even if we approve the ARPA funds?
if you guys approve the ARPA funds and we had the guaranteed funding for the radio, I would use the AFT grant for something else. Not sure what yet. We have a couple of weeks to decide, but I wouldn't apply for the grant if we already had the funding secured another way, I guess.
So if I heard you right, you could use that grant money for some other greater need, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
The thing is that the village, we don't have the ARPA funds.
Yeah.
So,
Can you give me an idea what,
well, no, we just, I think our Baker Tilly says that we can't use the ARPA funds for the radio replacement, so.
If I could interject a moment.
We could agree that we should use them here, but that won't translate at our board level when our experts are saying we use the funds for that.
Chris, did you end up talking to Deb at all about getting clarification on the town side for that?
Yeah, we did not lose any revenue either, but we are looking into seeing if there's another way that we can access those funds for this.
Okay.
so Baker Tilly is telling us that we would be out of compliance if we tried using those funds towards something like this.
Right.
So then I would
Could I get a
suggest,
word in a moment?
Hello?
Eric from. So the answer from the village wasn't necessarily no, but it also wasn't heck yeah, go right ahead. Through Baker Tilly's review, they felt that it wasn't that our need for radios, whether it be fire and EMS, wasn't clearly defined or created by the pandemic. We're effectively in a replacement cycle as one of the reasons to say that they might not think that it's a qualified expense. But we can say for sure that, and I have not replied through Matt to Baker Tilly yet because I was working on getting more justification behind my reply. We know that without effective communications, we cannot respond effectively to the COVID pandemic or whatever pandemic might present to us in the future. and that we need those communications not only to know where the calls are, but to identify additional responders of the possibility of exposure to the virus and to be able to communicate effectively to our hospitals. So we haven't gotten the no yet from Baker Tilly, but they weren't super rosy about it either.
So then I would suggest that you guys both, or whoever's taking charge of writing the grant request, to go ahead and submit that first. And we can work on this at a later, I don't know how anybody else feels.
I would always apply for a grant.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't apply for the grant.
Well, if I heard you, you feel like there's a greater need. I mean, this sounds like a great need,
This right now is our greatest need.
greatest need.
At least for our side. I don't know where Deer Grove's sitting, the chief can answer that better. But we have right now, basically every radio we own is obsolete. As they fail, they
Yeah.
can't be repaired anymore.
Yeah.
They're garbage.
Yeah.
So, and when you already are short because you don't have a radio for every seating position, now you're losing the radios for the, that a team would share. You're trying to rob Peter to pay Paul somewhere else. So
That's terrible that you guys are out there with radios that don't work.
So
That's a problem. I have a problem with that. So I feel like whatever we need to do to help support this, I don't, if it's the grant.
Yeah, I'd go for the grant. Like you said, go for the grant, and then if you don't get the grant, then we can revisit.
Then we can look at other options to finance it, But it's something that we need to move forward on.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
The whole $100,000 price tag it's expensive, but
Is the
I didn't even read it.
MDT, is that this at all, or is that a separate?
that is separate. So MDT is gonna allow us to communicate with dispatch, not really communicate with them. I mean, if we see the same software that the dispatch kind of does, so we can update our en route times and update what we found by taking it in, but it's not live communication, through the radio.
What's the terms of the grant? Like, what's the timing of it? Is there like deadline? When do
The
you?
deadline is the middle of December. It has to be submitted.
And then when do you get notice on that?
This last time it took almost a year to get through we made it all the way through to the very end. They ran out of money before they got to our grant.
So if I'm hearing it right, you apply for this grant, we may not hear for a year and you're out there with radios that are obsolete.
It could be up to a year. Well, Chief Lang might know a little bit better. Do you know how long it normally goes, Chief Lang?
Generally, they're starting beginning of August to award some of the grants and then moving through the process and all the money that they have to allocate. The discussion I had with Matt at the village level was that if we don't get the AFG grant, this goes from, yeah, we kind of really need it kind of bad to, oh my God, we needed it yesterday. So this would have to be a 2023 budget initiative. And the total cost for us is like $92,000 for all of our mobile and portable radios with installation.
so that's in addition to the $114,000.
This is just
Those
fire.
numbers we got for Nick are just covering Cottage Grove Fire. They're not covering Deer Grove EMS.
So this is the first time we've talked about radios.
No, we've always talked about radios.
We talked about radio.
Like, have we?
We've hung our head on trying to get the AFG in hopes that we had really good submissions and that we wouldn't need to ask y'all for the money because we know that it's a big expense and we'd rather have you spend money on what we think is as equally important things and get the big grant from the government, whereas we didn't expect to go 2 years with limited or no success that we've had.
So question, is the village borrowing money for the fire apparatus that we're purchasing next year, that arrives next year?
Which one is that?
That's the engine. I don't believe
Engine.
the engine are. I think that you guys.
Oh, that was.
Is that the one that's contingent upon the fire agreement? Or is it a separate one? It's a different one.
So I don't know if we're borrowing, but I know we're paying. I think it's not up to us to figure out how to pay for it.
I
No, I
don't
don't
believe you
think-
guys
I
are
think it's
borrowing.
out
I
of
think
our-
you guys have
our
had it written into
fund.
your budget for quite a
Capital
while.
fund.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
was
we
gonna
are,
say, if you were borrowing and we are, could we roll radios
Right.
into that
into it.
Purchase price.
I guess, I just want to take a step back because from my perspective, this is the first that I've heard that the radios are going bad.
Oh,
The new guy here, right?
yeah. Okay.
So I mean, like, it keeps going back to my ask of like, what else is broken? What else needs to be fixed? Like, we've got trucks, we've got building stuff to do, like it makes it hard for us to go back to the board and lobby for things when we don't know, like, what's the whole wish list?
Sure. That's what that.
It's almost
capital-
like a capital.
That's what that
line item,
capital
let's
budget
say.
was that I submitted to you guys a couple months ago.
But I don't
Radios
recall the
are-
radios being in
The
there.
radios are on. It said contingent if we didn't get the AFG grant, then we would have to plan to purchase them.
Okay.
And I know that
Those are.
obviously a capital budget would be easier for you guys to have way out in advance, but none of my predecessors had one. So I guess we've taken it upon ourselves to do that, to try and get you guys more information so you're not blindsided by big purchases like this. And the first few years obviously are gonna have some big expenses that you guys maybe aren't expecting because we didn't have that in place, but I did write it out till 2033, which is when engine 4 is supposed to be replaced. So we do have now 12 years of budget or expense items that we can plan for.
I guess my feedback is that, I'm not a fireman, so I don't know what's a 5-alarm fire and I don't know what's a minor annoyance, right? The dollar amounts don't mean anything to me. It's just a number on a paper, right? So when I hear that you have a 4-man fire team going into a building and you only have one radio for all 4.
2 radios.
Okay, 2 radios, that's like
Two teams of 2 is what we
2 teams of 2,
operate.
like it's still 1 radio per team. I mean, like, I don't know, it seems like.
Yeah, I think when you,
crisis here.
hindsight, but like when you do a capital list, is it, you prioritize, is there like categories? Number 1 priority, safety and risk. Number 2, minor annoyances, or number 3, you know what I'm saying? Do you do that with a capital
I
list?
think 2023 has got a few big things on there, like the squad is supposed to be replaced in 2023. But if that had to be pushed back a year or 2, that wouldn't be a crisis. That truck's in decent shape. So it's just following the schedule that we had laid out of 25 years on the truck. So if we need to budget some stuff to make this work, that's fine, I guess.
Yeah,
And like I said, I did put that list together. I did submit it to you guys a couple months ago.
okay.
I think the
Sure.
last one.
I'll go back and look at it.
As far as
You know, it just, to me, that seems like a big
I guess as
risk in
far
my
as
mind.
why you haven't heard about it, to answer David's question, would be more so because the last 2 years, we've submitted this grant twice in the hopes that we would get it replaced, and none of the municipalities would really have to contribute to replacing this, other than we applied for a financial hardship with the grant, saying that we wouldn't have to match any funds, but if that was denied and they approved the grant, then we'd have to meet like 5%, I believe it is. So
So you wrote for this grant before and
we've written for this grant
ways and you
twice.
weren't successful?
Yes, we
So
just,
what's to say we'd be successful writing for this grant now?
it depends
Past
on what they,
performance doesn't
Close.
dictate what future
right.
outcome.
So it depends on who applies and what they deem as the most important need. One thing we did is when we applied the last 2 times, it was like multiple, it was us, Deerfield Fire, Deer Grove EMS, Cambridge Fire, Cambridge EMS, Marshall, and Marshall EMS. So there's like 7 departments and it was a huge number. It was almost, I think it was around $1 million, close to $1 million for the grant. But I think this time we're gonna shrink it down to be just us, Deer Grove, and Deerfield Fire, because we all 3 work together pretty closely with Deer Grove sharing Deerfield and Cottage Grove. So we're hoping we're gonna take basically the same language from the last grant and resubmit it with less people on it. We're hoping that a smaller price tag would make them bite on it.
Can you
How does-
look at the other grants that were awarded money to see what they did to get it over you?
So we can't go into everybody's narratives and pull it up to see what they wrote, but this last time we wrote this grant, we submitted it to a professional grant writing company and they revised it and they submitted it for us.
It's a good question, but I think typically you only see the recipients of the grant and that's it. You don't see the fine detail.
How does
Why they
our,
got it, at least my experience.
how does our radio status compare to other communities around us? I mean, is this something everybody's gonna be going through?
Everybody's, well, I mean, you heard 7 departments that are our immediate neighbors that are all applying for the same grant because they've got the same problem. So when Dane, for those of you guys that don't know, about 12 to 15 years ago, the radio system was replaced in the county with a new system called Danecom, which is what we're operating on now. When that happened, everybody had to replace their radios, and E.F. Johnson was the one that the county picked to be the end all be all, the great replacement, as they call it. Unfortunately, at the time that it went through, they were already almost obsolete. So all these departments bought all these radios at reduced costs, which they weren't even really that much cheaper. But they were almost obsolete from day one. Now they're extremely obsolete and a lot of people are hurting. Bigger departments like Sun Prairie and Fitchburg just went out and bought new radios outright because they have the funding to do that. I mean, they're very large municipalities. They can easily do that.
They bought good radios, do you know? I mean, it sounds like there are a lot of bad radios out there.
Yeah.
Are they feeling good? When you're doing your research, I mean, is there a good radio out there that you can trust?
Yeah, there's plenty of options out there. You know, some of
You
the
said
ones
the
that
other one
people
was
are
just
going.
obsolete from day one. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
the
that's-
reason why they ended up with the E.F. Johnson, because I was involved with the Daycom thing when it first came out. And E.F. Johnson somehow got their fingers in with Harris, who was doing the new full redesign of the 911 center. And E.F. Johnson and Harris said, oh yeah, these are the greatest things since sliced bread. We could program them, 100% guaranteed interoperability amongst the system. And it was great for the first 6 months. And then it just started petering out like crazy.
There's a warranty on those
I think,
things?
Yeah, 30 seconds or 30 feet.
I think we should do this. Let's go for the grant. I think we should go back to the village and have a bit broader conversation for a plan B around, ARPA is just like symptomatic of the whole thing, right? Like we need new radios, right? Like I think how we pay for it is secondary to me, right? Like let's figure out a way to get you some relief here, right? Because you've got radios that are, maybe we can't buy them all up front.
Or
Again,
maybe
I don't know
over
anything about radios.
or over a 2-year period.
But let's come up with a plan to replace the radios and do it so it's not $100,000+
$200,000.
whatever the number is, but let's
14.
at least have a plan and then we can communicate it back.
I guess the reason we were coming to you guys with this is we're trying to lighten the burden on you guys too. I mean, like, if we can get a way of paying for a radio without, you know, you guys having to go back to the taxpayer and ask for a large sum of money, obviously that's a win for both parties,
Yeah, I
right?
like David's idea. Can you, I mean, we're just jotting notes down. Can you have like just a clearly laid out, you mentioned, you know, got 13 for 37K, 40 for 77K, and then I don't know what Eric wants. Can you guys have 2 separate documents to help us?
I've got the quotes, I'll make copies.
Yeah, I mean, we can get the quote. I think for me, maybe it's just me then, I mean, like overall, I want to go back, maybe I'll reach out to you offline and
But
I
you
want to
gotta
go
get
through the budget and look
too,
and
right?
see like what that capital list is, just so that I can get a better understanding, because it wasn't, and apologies, right? Like you put it in there, but it's like, it's hard for me to decipher what's a 5-alarm fire and what's man, this is really annoying. This can wait till 2026, right? Like it's just to get a better understanding around what the priority list is.
Is Deer Grove, is that outlined in that too, with all the detail? Or is that something we need to get separate?
That would be separate.
That'd be separate.
So Eric, can you get that to us?
I've already provided it to Matt.
I think Eric put it in his budget request too, but
It's all outlined in
I
that
think-
budget?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we've
Okay.
seen stuff from your girl, haven't we?
Yeah, I've already submitted that up to Matt.
Okay,
again, it's just for me to have a better understanding of what, like, priority, right? And if it's even in there, again, apologies, but just to, like, so that I can have something that I can reference
It's-
back. we come
It's
back-
definitely not ranked. It's just put in there, this year, this is what we would expect to have to do. So,
You know, because like it's,
Yeah, definitely this conversation brings more urgency because I'm with you. I
Yeah.
saw it, we saw it.
I mean, you could tell, hey, dude, I need new radios, like, okay, that doesn't sound like a priority, right? But if you're like, hey, dude, these have been obsolete since the minute we bought them, you know, like, oh, that's a priority, right? Because that was 10, 12 years ago, you know?
Yep.
But I think let's go back to the board and have a broader conversation around, like, if you do get the grant, then it's just good planning, right, to have a possible plan B. Or maybe we pay for the radios and use the grant for something else, but at least I'd rather have more options than no option.
sure. The only thing with AFG grants is once it's approved, you can't alter it. So that's what Chief McMullen is dealing with, Jerry McMullen from Deer Grove, for those of you guys that don't know. He took over as chief of Monona. His predecessor wrote a grant for SCBA's, which are now significantly more expensive than the original grant was. And so he went back to AFG and said, basically, we can't meet this price. They said, well, tough, you know, and then he's like, well, can I use it for this instead? They're like, no, you need to buy that many SCBA's. That's what we approved. So they don't budge once it's approved, I guess. So if we do submit and we do win it, we have to use those funds for radios. We can't just go, well, we've already bought radios now, so we don't need it anymore. We could turn the grant down, but then that would be, you know.
Which goes even more to my point of, don't stop writing for the grants.
Sure.
That's got to be the priority first and foremost.
And just to clarify, we're writing for grants all the time. I mean,
No, I'm not saying that you're not, because I know,
we're working on 2 or 3 of them right now for significant items that, you know, we're always applying for grants, so anything we can get.
With your applications, do you submit like letters with them, like that the boards could say, hey, it would be really helpful, or this is really needed?
In the past, we have done that. I don't think we did the last few times, and I think that could help. Senator Baldwin's actually got a spot on her page where you can specifically request a letter of recommendation for a grant. So I don't know if Jerry ended up writing the grant last time with Lexpool's company. I don't know if he got any of that stuff, but maybe it'd be an option this time.
I think some of our politicians is a great place to start.
I think our, probably our local or our state senator and representative would probably, I mean, Hebel, didn't he give an award or commendation or something?
He's doing, like hometown heroes, I think it was, like, he was recognizing local.
Yeah,
So
so I'm sure he'd love to write a letter.
So the discuss and consider for action, that's being tabled until our next steps is for us to explore this more with our board.
And on Thursday, the WTA is having a webinar on ARPA funds, and Deb's going to be in that, seeing if she can get an answer on the radios. But I would say then, from the town's perspective, if we want to move forward, the town would be willing to include the radios in our borrowing for the fire trucks for payment in 22 to get it taken care of. Okay, moving on to discuss and consider false alarm issue of hydrant chemical.
Okay, so this one kind of goes back to a village, more of a village ordinance. But basically, the village ordinance says that if you have more than 3 false alarms in a 60-day period, they're supposed to be getting a citation. Hydride chemical is probably one of our biggest offenders. And I pulled the numbers. In the last 5 years, we've had 30 false alarms there with the system that they have. This year, it's 6 of them in the last, starting in October, I believe it was 6 of them.
Well, you're looking at 3 false alarms in a calendar year or 3 false alarms, period?
It's 3 false alarms in a 60-day period. Anything
Okay, I
past,
missed that. 60
anything
days.
past the third alarm, you're supposed to get an alarm. And if you have more than 2 false alarms in a 12-hour period, that's supposed to be in it.
You've had 6 and how many?
We've had 6 in,
How many citations are they supposed to get? Let's ask that question.
yeah, it's not even really clear how many they're supposed to get, but they're definitely supposed to get one after 3 in 30 days, and they're supposed to get one with more than 2 in 24 hours.
Did they have any more than 2 in 24 hours?
They had, October 5th, they had 2 of them within 6 hours of each other.
I count 2 citations at least.
So it started, this last batch started October 2nd.
Citation for what? How much? It probably doesn't say.
That'd be a village ordinance or?
He just said it was a village ordinance. What village ordinance is that?
It's,
No, they're in the village. In the village.
Oh, it's
yeah,
the village.
So do we.
Have we talked to them like, hey, your alarm
106
stinks, get
dash
it
one,
fixed?
chapter 106, it's called alarm systems, talks about false alarms. On a false alarm.
Because it's not only for hydrant, it's the same way for residential alarms also. If I think it's just alarms in general. But we have an ordinance somewhere to that too.
So I guess I don't understand. I mean, have we been made aware of it and we haven't cited?
Every time we go there, we ask them, like, you guys gotta get this fixed. And every time we'll get the alarm company here and they'll look at it. And basically it just comes back to the system that they're running, it's prone to false alarms. So everybody else in town is using basically a paddle style flow switch for their alarms, where Hydrate's using more of like a float style. So what happens is like a rapid decrease in pressure in the system causes that float to drop, trip the alarm. So like if somebody opens a hydrant too fast,
Department has to issue the citation.
Okay, general penalty, whichever so provided in this code. First offense, any person who shall violate any provision of this code subject to a penalty shall, upon conviction thereof, forfeit not more than $500 together with cost of prosecution and applicable surcharges, and in default of payment of such forfeiture and cost of prosecution and surcharge, shall be imprisoned in the county jail until such forfeiture shall be paid, but not exceeding 90 days. Second offense.
But how can you do that for a company?
24/7. So I guess I'm still like, I don't understand, like,
Not less than 10
we've been
more
made
than
aware, has
500
the police department's been made aware, we just haven't cited them yet, or?
so the police department goes the same, they get the same alarm as
They get the
we
same alarm.
go when we go. But I guess we were looking at what our next step should be. I don't feel like we need to, I guess, pick on them, I guess, because they do a lot for the community on top of it, but
Law enforcement.
I think our next step we were talking about is maybe writing them an order for compliance that they need to fix this. Like, they need to if they can't fix what they have, then they need to replace it because it's not working. They're like, out of everybody that's got an alarm system in the municipality, this is where we go all the time.
So it's like a formal warning then?
That's what we're looking at doing, drafting a formal.
Is that something your attorney would have to
You,
do?
you can issue a penalty of not more than $500. So you could just issue a penalty.
But that's the other side of this coin, and this is maybe a topic for the village board. There's nothing in the village ordinances that gives the fire chief citation authority. The town has it clearly laid out as to when an ordinance violation happens, that the fire chief is a deputy that can issue a citation.
It says fire inspector. The difference?
I guess the fire inspector answers to me, I guess. Does it say that the fire inspector has authority?
So if I'm hearing you right, we have this ordinance, but there's no way of enforcing it.
No, we can't.
It sounds like it.
Fire inspector. It's the very last person on the list.
Okay.
But he's not the fire inspector.
Fire inspector answers to me though, so.
He answers.
So it goes law enforcement officers, then village officers, and it goes village president, director of public works, and then code enforcement officers, plumbing, building, zoning, electrical, HVAC, then fire inspector.
So if the fire inspector reports to you, wouldn't it make sense for you to tell the
But
fire
is it-
inspector to write up a formal?
So we can go through that.
Doesn't mean that order, like, the fire
I guess I'm here to
inspector-
help,
It's
if
just
that's something we need to do, but everything it sounds like it should be your fire inspector, you talk to him, or he writes up the warning. If there's a warning, we gotta, I guess,
It probably has.
I guess the reason I'm coming to you
warning
is
is what
because,
you're asking us, because
because in the entire history of us it being Cottageville Fire, we've never written a citation for anybody in the town or the village. So I guess before we just went, we're gonna write somebody a citation, I guess we'd like to have some input.
Jump in with both feet.
Before we do
Ask
that,
the
I
police
guess.
department to issue a citation.
So did you say that they've had 30 false alarms over the past 2 years?
5 years,
That's 5 years, okay.
but 6 in the last.
So how much in this calendar year?
6 in this calendar.
6 in this calendar year.
6
But
this
2 in
year,
1 day.
2 in 1 day. Let's see, 2020, they had 3, 4, we had 5 in 2020. And 2 of those were in the same day within a few hours of each other. It gets really bad right around hydrant flushing time. 'Cause what happens is the hydrants get open too fast. Or there's a surge in the system and it trips that flow.
Yeah, I guess how can we help, Nick, or did you answer the question? If the fire inspector reports to you, and you're on the list that they can write the citation, would it make sense for you to tell your fire inspector, let's write up a formal warning?
I mean, that's what we can do.
I mean, that sounds.
So when was the
It's
most
not town
recent
property.
offense?
What's that?
I mean, I
November
go back to the
22nd.
police department and have them
And
issue
then
a
the one before
citation
that.
for the
so
last.
Were they within that?
They were in violation.
Okay.
So it started about October 2nd, was the first one.
Yeah.
October 2nd.
Yeah, I'm just asking you for your thoughts on how I'm saying it.
One on October 12th, one on October 19th, and one on the 22nd of November. So that's within 60 days of each
They
other.
had 4 within 60 days. So you would just go off that and have the fire inspector write a citation.
They let police do it.
Either way.
That's fine, but I guess you said it well. They've been really good to our community. Are they even aware of a
They know
potential
that it's a
citation?
problem.
They know that they could get cited?
They know that it's a problem. I don't know if they know that they can be cited.
Well, it shouldn't take that for them to get
Clearly,
fixed.
it's, but it is
Time
in
to-
the village ordinance.
It's a little elbow grease. Yes.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Is it one more conversation? Listen, there is an ordinance. You're gonna get fined if you don't get this fixed.
I think that's kind of what we should do, rather than, because they've gotten so many of these without having any consequence. I think that what should happen is maybe an order for compliance, like you need to fix this, or the next time it's gonna be a citation. I guess, Before we just
Go
go,
right straight to the police chief. Do it that way.
yeah,
I mean, how better to get their attention than to have the police chief down there?
yeah. So,
Well, it seems like it's getting worse as the years go on then. It was 5 last year and 6 this year.
Well, I mean, if he
Yeah.
can,
2019, they had 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 in 19. They only had 1 in 2018, 2 in 2017.
okay, but how many of all those, okay, how many can be traced exactly to flushing the mains?
I mean,
I mean, that's
sometimes
what-
it can, sometimes it can. I mean, sometimes it's our fault if we're filling the truck too fast too. I mean, sometimes we do it.
But see, it shouldn't be, their
Shouldn't-
shortfall of their system shouldn't be predicated on anything. We shouldn't have to modify the villages with their flushing their mains or how fast they fill a truck. Shouldn't, oh, we gotta worry about hydrate. No, hydrate should be,
Right, because
you
there's
know, and I agree.
probably 100.
Send them a copy of the ordinance, a letter that, hey, this is your first and final warning, and the next time, you know, just let them, actually, send them, and you have been in violation for these many years without action. This is your first and last warning. Here's a copy of the ordinance. Get her done.
What if the village all flush the toilets at the same time? Would that have the same effect?
Halftime Super Bowl.
Wow, not a halftime. That's bad time.
First of all, if you could get that many people to do something together.
Are you okay with taking that approach?
Yeah, that's fine. We'll draft something up and send it over to them. And I don't know if you guys want to review it before it goes out.
I think so.
Okay,
It gives you latitude to put some crass words in there.
yeah.
You dirty rat.
Ready to move on then?
Yep.
Discuss, consider next meeting date agenda items.
24th?
Landfill had the 24th of January down.
Really, just really quick, that was a discuss and consider for the false alarm.
It's-
Yeah,
No.
it's
Okay.
really,
Good deal. Sorry, had to ask.
So
we'll put
landfill,
that on for next meeting. We'll have the radios on. Fire agreement and PAA, see what's
And the
happening.
results of their letter. In the chief's report, perhaps.
January 24th.
Anything else?
I move we adjourn.
second.
It's non-debatable. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
So
Huh?
revenue.
Got her down, January 24th.
To accept the reduction in revenue due to COVID-19 public health emergency relative to revenues.
Shoot that beer early. I tell you that one.
No.
COVID-19.
One thing you showed me was what your wife and either your dad or dad was
my
off.
father. So.
Yeah.